I'm going to show you the most brazen fraud yet by so-called journalists in Gaza, another Israeli war crime. And I've got to ask, when will journalists learn not to trust any figures, any allegations, any claims coming out of Gaza, whether from Hamas or the terrorist group that runs the place, whether from the health ministry in Gaza, which Hamas actually runs? I mean, seriously. Or from their sources, other journalists in Gaza who are often either on the take or too terrified to say something that Hamas will not like. When will people learn? Well, I'm going to give you a warning. I'm going to give you a couple of examples before I get to the latest one. You know, Israel's bombed another food truck. Oh, shocking. For instance, this is a big one. How can anyone believe the death toll that the Hamas-led health ministry puts out? I mean, just look, how can the death toll rise as steadily as this? It's almost a straight line, as if there are never any periods of less intensive combat or more intensive combat or sudden catastrophe. I mean, look at that. You really know someone's just making the stuff up, you know, another day and another fixed number, every day the same thing. And how come so very many of these dead are supposedly women and children, more than 2/3. Now, that particular claim is a huge propaganda point for Hamas and its useful idiots in the Western media who I don't see questioning, almost never. Take CNN, for instance.
These are tiny figures of children on the walls of our studio, one for almost each of the 12,800 kids who have died in Gaza, according to numbers from Gaza's health ministry.
Now, you think for a second. Israel reckons it's actually killed at least 12,000 Hamas fighters. And about a month ago, Hamas did admit to at least 6,000, but you know it won't want to admit to more. Israel needs to know how many how many are left to kill. So, all right, let's say 10,000, right? But under the official death toll from Gaza, fewer than 9,000 men have died. Fewer than 9,000, which must mean that every single man in Gaza killed by Israel so far was, in fact, a Hamas terrorist. And that doesn't make sense. How could Israel in this war kill more than 20,000 women and children, allegedly, but not one single male civilian? Not one. No one is too old to fight, too sick, looking after this or that, a doctor maybe. Not one. Obviously, these figures lie. And so does Hamas. You remember how quickly claimed that 471 people have been killed by Israel when it allegedly bombed the Al-Ali hospital. That was last year. And how so many journalists believed it, including, it seemed, the BBC.
Very soon, video was posted from Gaza of bodies laid out near the ruins of the hospital.
The ruins of the hospital? Here is what reporters at the site actually found that was hit by an apparent rocket. It was not the hospital at all, but a small car park outside. You can see for yourself that the hospital is still standing. Aerial images confirmed some rocket did hit the car park, but leaving only a very small crater, some broken windows and burned cars in a fireball caused by the rocket's fuel. The explosion from the rocket itself was so small that most cars weren't even knocked over. Now, the idea that this was an Israeli bomb or missile, that's absolutely crazy. I mean, an Israeli bomb would take out a whole building, not leave a small dent in the asphalt. Experts say it was actually a misfired rocket from Palestinian terrorists. You could actually see it from other footage as well. And you could hear it from Palestinian terrorists who seem to admit just that in taped recordings released by Israel. And when you look at that small explosion in such a small area, it could not have killed 471 people. It was plainly made up. So, again, we know, or should know, that Hamas lies. Lies, lies, and lies. And we also know that journalists of the West too quickly swallow those lies. Yet, here we go again. Last week, another shocking claim. Israel had this time killed another 9 Palestinians when it bombed an aid vehicle bringing food to the starving. Now, around the world, Even on our news.com.au website, I work for news.com, we were running an Al Jazeera report on this Israeli atrocity.
This is the second time in a week Israeli forces have targeted a crowd waiting for food.
But a warning, Al Jazeera is actually owned by Qatar, and Qatar funds Hamas. It's a Hamas supporter. And of course that shows up in Al Jazeera coverage. Because let me show you what actually happened. And how is it that we got photos of this blown up aid truck with unmarked protective vests somehow draped over the wreckage? No body inside them, just how does that happen? And posters and apparent aid also untouched at the back of this bombed out truck. How odd is that? Well, let me show you exactly how odd. Israel itself, the Israeli Defense Force, filmed itself bombing this same truck, you can see it by the beach, near the same telegraph poles, and announced it had killed a Hamas operative. And initial footage filmed by Al Jazeera, right on the spot, showed the initial reaction. People rushing to see. There are no posters, but they're actually pushed back after a while, so they're hurried out the way. But you don't see posters, you don't see safety jackets, you don't see aid packed in the back of the truck. There's nothing to indicate this was bringing food to anyone. No posters up front either. Yet, soon, hallelujah, there were posters all over the wreck, things purporting to be food packages. All of it to suggest that this belonged to an aid group and was carrying food, which the Al Jazeera reporter faithfully parroted in a report that went around the world. It was those evil Israelis.
It's obvious from what's on the truck that this is one of the NGOs who are working on the ground in helping Palestinian displaced families, because all of these banners are for projects implemented on the ground. The people who were targeted are part of this initiative. Israel is not only blockading aid into the Gaza Strip, but it's also killing Palestinians who are working in helping people from starvation.
Seriously, all those banners were put on the truck after it was bombed, as we saw from the earlier Al Jazeera footage that reporter didn't use. Believe nothing from Al Jazeera, nothing from Hamas, nothing from journalists who just trust terrorists to tell the truth. As if.